Bat and the Waiting Game. Chapter 23. Company. Bat found that he didn't have much of an appetite either, so after he'd pushed his eggs around his plate for a while, Mom drove him to school. It turned out that everyone there had heard about what had happened at the play too. From the moment Bat got out of the car, questions followed him. Bat, did you really take your skunk to the play? Bat, is it true that the auditorium had to be shut down for a whole week? Bat, can you really train a skunk to spray on purpose? Everybody calm down, Mr. Grayson said from the front of the class. Bat wished he could disappear. He wished he didn't have the skin for people to look at or ears for people to talk into. Mr. Grayson must have assigned something for the class to do, because all around the room, kids were rifling through their desks and flipping open books. Bat, Mr. Grayson said, kneeling beside Bat's desk, what can I do to help you? Bat shook his head. He didn't have any words. He shook his head more, and then he shook it harder and harder, and he kept shaking it. Bat, Mr. Grayson said, but Bat shook his head on and on, like the pendulum of a clock, back and forth, right and left and right, left and right. And Mr. Grayson stayed right there, kneeling next to Bat's desk, his hand on Bat's shoulder. Finally, Bat felt better. His throat felt normal again, and it didn't bother him so much that he had skin and ears. Mr. Grayson squeezed his shoulder one more time, then stood up. I think, he said to Bat, that Baby Cakes could use some cuddles. Are you the man for the job? There in her enclosure was Baby Cakes, ears flopping, nose twitching. Bat sat cross-legged and held out one of the apple slices Mr. Grayson had given him. He had watched Mr. Grayson take the apple out of his own sack, which he kept in his orange satchel next to his big desk on the front of the room, and cut it up with a pocket knife. Baby Cakes hopped over to Bat and sniffed the apple slice before accepting it. Once she was happily chewing, Bat lifted her up and tucked her into the space between his crossed legs. Behind him, class went on. They were talking about a book they'd been reading, about a girl with magical powers that allowed her to pause time and fix past mistakes, which at this moment sounded wonderful to Bat, even though he had read the book, too, and knew that every time the girl fixed one mistake, 3 more popped up in its place. Bat wondered if new, different mistakes would be better than the mistakes he had made. Taking Thor to the play, ruining Janie's big night, and not knowing how to be a better friend to Israel. Maybe not being his friend anymore at all. Do you want some company? Bat looked up. It was Israel. I have company, Bat said, petting Baby Cakes. Israel sighed. I know, he said. I meant human company. Oh, Bat said. Actually, yes, I would like your company. This made Israel smile. Israel climbed into the enclosure and sat down next to Bat. He leaned over and scratched Baby Cakes between the ears, just the way she liked. They sat quietly together for a while. Then Bat said all at once, Are you still mad at me? A little, said Israel. Not really. If you're still mad at me, Bat asked, even a little, then why are you being my company? Because, said Israel, you're my best friend, right? Bat's eyes began to sting like little needle pricks. Yes, he said, but he looked down at Baby Cake's fluffy Angora fur and her sideways ears, not up at Israel. Best friends need to stick together, Israel said. He reached over and pet Baby Cakes, his fingers disappearing into her soft white fur. Then he said, Bat, I have an idea for how you can apologize to Janie. Chapter 24. Take 2. Apologizing was not something that Bat was very good at. Also, it was something that he didn't have much practice doing. Usually, apologies didn't do anything, and that was the problem with them. An apology was just words. Bat especially hated it when people tried to force you to apologize for something, because no one can make someone sorry, and no one believes an apology that is forced. Mr. Grayson didn't believe in making people apologize. I can't make you sorry, he was fond of saying. Words are cheap. That's something else he was fond of saying. What we do is more important than what we say. That was another Mr. Grayson special, as he liked to call his favorite sayings. And Bat agreed with Mr. Grayson. Doing something meant more than saying something. So if Bat was going to apologize to Janie, it was going to have to be an active apology. Lucky for Bat, he had a friend who was very good at doing things. Better than Bat was, Bat admitted to himself. Bat liked to be good at things. He liked to be an expert. And to be an expert, you have to learn from experts. When Bat wanted to learn more about the care and feeding of skunks, he'd gone straight to a world skunk expert, Dr. Derry Dragoo. I'm an expert at apologizing, Israel assured him, because I'm an expert at making mistakes. This was an every other weekend, so Dad picked Bat up after school. Normally, they would have picked Janie up next, but Dad told Bat that Janie would be spending the afternoon with one of her friends. The first thing Bat asked Dad before he even got into Dad's little car was, "Can you please take me over to Israel's house after breakfast tomorrow? He and I have a project we need to work on." "A school project?" Dad asked. "No," said Bat, "a special project." On Sunday evening at 5 o'clock, everything was ready. Bat and Israel had set up 2 rows of chairs in Israel's backyard. Israel's mom had lined the walkway with clay bowls, each filled with water and topped with a floating candle. The night before, Dad helped Bat find the phone numbers for Frida and Karina and Maggie, and Bat had called them all. "I know I messed up your play," he told each one of them, "and I want to make it up to Janie. Will you come over to my friend Israel's house at 5 o'clock on Sunday night?" Mom was there with Janie's favorite brownies, just like Bat had asked. Soon, Israel's yard was full of people. Even Lawrence came, wearing his blue scrubs again. "Sorry, Bat, I didn't have time to change," he said. "That's all right," Bat told him. "You look like more like yourself this way." Lawrence laughed his wonderful laugh. His laugh was one of Bat's favorite sounds in the world. Finally, Bat heard the honk of Dad's car horn from the front of the house. "Janie's here!" Bat announced, running up the pathway to the front of the yard. His heart beat as if he'd run all the way around the block, with his arms folded into his excited flapping motion. Tom went into the front yard to let Dad and Janie in, and a minute later he led them out the back door and into the yard. Janie's eyebrows shot up and her mouth opened a surprised "oh" as she stepped onto the grass. Bat saw her, seeing the people in the 2 rows of chairs, the glowing, floating candles along the path, and in front of the garden shed where Israel's mom had made her pottery, a little stage they had set up with a curtain hanging as a backdrop, and Mr. Grayson sitting off to the side with his keyboard ready to play. "What is all this?" Janie asked Dad, who was at her side. "Ask Bat," Dad said, nodding in Bat's direction. Janie's arms began to fold across her chest again, like she was remembering that she was still mad. But then they loosened and dropped to her side. "Bat," she said, walking over to him, "what's going on?" "I'm sorry I brought Thor to your show, and I'm sorry that he sprayed," Bat said. He noticed that Janie was wearing sandals, and that she had painted her toes dark blue. There were little stars painted on the big toes. He talked to the painted-on stars. "You're a really great singer," Bat said. "Will you sing your solo again? Mr. Grayson can play the music." For a second that felt like a minute, Janie didn't say anything. Then she put her hand under Bat's chin, raised up his face so that he could look into her eyes. Bat didn't love looking into people's eyes, but he knew that Janie really liked to, and he remembered what Mom had told him about how even though it wasn't Bat's favorite thing to do, he stared right into Janie's eyes, which were almost exactly like his own. Bat realized, a brown so dark it was almost black and shiny. Maybe Janie saw something in his eyes that let her know that he was really sorry. Or maybe she just liked the candles and the stage, because she smiled, gave Bat a hug, which he did like, and the press of her arms and the smell of her apple shampoo. "Oh, Bat," she said, "the school is going to redo the play next weekend after the auditorium has aired out. But this was really nice of you to set up. And anyway, the whole thing was pretty funny when you think about it." She dropped her voice to a whisper just for Bat to hear. Also, I didn't mean it when I said I wish Mom had never brought Thor home. I'm sorry I said that. She let him out of the hug and said to the audience, "Hi, everybody! Thank you for coming!" And then everyone began to clap for Janie, her friends, and Bat's friends, and their family, and Mr. Grayson. And then Janie walked up to the little stage, and she nodded at Mr. Grayson to start playing. Bat sat down next to Israel, who saved a seat for him. Then he pulled something out of his pocket to show Israel. It was the clay skunk Israel had made for him. "Hey," Israel whispered, "you're carrying it. That's so cool." Bat grinned and rubbed his fingers along the clay lump, memorizing the way the words from Israel felt against his thumb. Thor wasn't with him, but Bat felt a sweet warmth in his chest, almost as if the skunk kit was cuddled there. Janie started to sing, surprising Bat all over again with her strong, clear voice. It was beautiful. The evening was beautiful. The rows of candles were beautiful. The rows of chairs were beautiful. The people in them were beautiful. The floating candles were beautiful. The lump of clay in Bat's hand was beautiful. Right now, the whole world felt giant and open and full of beauty, and Bat was happy. The end. Until we start Bat and the end of everything. Bat's out.